State Antony Blinken said on Sunday he does not expect breakthroughs in upcoming U.S.-Russia security talks, but hopes to find some common ground amid a crisis in Ukraine.
I don't think we're going to see any breakthroughs next week. We're going to listen to their concerns, they'll listen to our concerns, and we'll see if there are grounds for progress.
Blinken told ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos that it was hard to be optimistic given Moscow's military buildup along the border with Ukraine.
To make actual progress, it's very hard to see that happening when there's an ongoing escalation, when Russia has a gun to the head of Ukraine with 100,000 troops near its borders, the possibility of doubling that on very short order.
Tens of thousands of Russian troops are gathered within reach of the border with Ukraine in preparation for what Washington and Kiev say could be an invasion, 8 years after Russia seized the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine. Russia denies invasion plans and says it is responding to what it calls aggressive and provocative behavior from the NATO military alliance and Ukraine, its former Soviet neighbor, which is tilted toward the West. On Sunday, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov arrived in Geneva for talks with the U.S. set to begin this week, but pessimism seems to emanate from both sides. Russia's state-owned RIA news agency quoted Ryabkov saying it was entirely possible diplomacy could end abruptly after a single meeting. Ryabkov has in the past compared the current situation to the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, when the world stood on the brink of nuclear war. His remarks were consistent with the uncompromising line that Russia has been signaling for weeks.
Warning ahead of critical strategic talks between the U.S. and Russia.
The European Union and member states have a very common position of strength. The United States is together, the NATO allies are together, and we are saying very clearly, and these are very clear words, that there will be massive consequences and severe cost if Russia adventures into Ukraine with military action.
A show of unity by the West as it tries to deter Moscow from invading Ukraine. The Kremlin has massed tens of thousands of Russian troops along the Ukrainian border, a move orchestrated by Vladimir Putin as the Russian president ups pressure on the West to halt its eastward expansion of NATO.
Putin cannot accept Ukraine, or Georgia for that matter, joining NATO. He might have come to terms with the Baltic states, them being a lost cause, a part of NATO and all, but he has decided to hold on to the end in Ukraine. And the only way to secure his strong-arm political authority over Ukraine is creating tension at the border.
On Sunday, Russia said it won't be threatened into making any concessions at the talks in Geneva, a response to possible punitive measures being discussed by the U.S., including sanctions on Putin's inner circle, canceling Russia's Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline to Germany, or the most drastic, cutting off Russia's links to the international banking system. The White House has already dismissed the Kremlin's demands about NATO as a non-starter. In the wake of the 2014 Ukrainian revolution that overthrew a government close to the Kremlin, Russia has repeatedly intervened in Ukraine, annexing the Crimean Peninsula and supporting separatist uprisings in 2 eastern provinces.
You can see how confident Ukrainians are in diplomacy with Russia with every scrape and swing of their shovels. Today, troops are digging new defensive trenches in the frozen ground close to Russian forces.
Ukrainian troops are preparing for the worst because they worry that Russia is not negotiating in good faith and is just going through the motions of diplomacy so it can say it gave peace a chance and then invade anyway.
In Geneva today, senior American and Russian diplomats met for nearly 8 hours.
Thank you, everyone.
No breakthroughs. Though Russia's lead diplomat today insisted it has no plans to invade, he added a warning.
After every mistake, every miscalculation with respect to what should be done in Euro-Atlantics, security of countries to the west of Russia suffers.
Russia has more than 100,000 troops positioned near Ukraine's borders. It is demanding Ukraine never be allowed to join NATO and that NATO shrink back to what it was in 1997, dismantling much of the alliance's presence across Eastern Europe and the Baltics. U.S. officials say it's such an unrealistic demand, they worry Vladimir Putin is building a case for the talks to fail, creating a pretext to invade Ukraine. At the front, soldiers told us they'll stand their ground as long as they can. Oleski says we all want to return to our families, but this is our land and we'll defend it. Troops here told us they hope Putin is bluffing, but they're not counting on diplomacy, suspecting it may be just a trick.
The only good news out of today's deadlock is that the U.S., Russia, and NATO have all agreed to keep talking, with more negotiations later.